Today you're going to find out why Christopher Nolan rewrote the ending of a poem that's 3,000 years old, why he burned through $250 million and over 600 kilometers of film stock on a movie with almost no CGI, why Tom Holland became convinced he was acting terribly on set when the problem wasn't him at all, who the mysterious sea peoples from the film's prophecy really are, and what they have to do with a real catastrophe that wiped out entire civilizations, and most importantly, what the ending actually means, the ending that infuriated some viewers and blew others away. This is The Odyssey, Nolan's biggest and most unexpected film. Let's go. On July 17th, 2026, The Odyssey hit theaters, Nolan's 13th film and his first since winning Oscars for Oppenheimer. Here's the scale. The budget, $250 million. The most expensive project of his career, roughly 2.5 times the cost of Oppenheimer. The runtime, nearly 3 hours. The rating, R. Yes, Nolan made a bloody ancient epic strictly for adults. The Rotten Tomatoes score at launch, 96%. That's higher than The Dark Knight and higher than Oppenheimer. Technically, the best reviewed film of Nolan's entire career. The box office matched $17.6 million from Thursday previews alone, a 2026 record, with opening weekend projections reaching $200 million. That would be the best opening of Nolan's career outside Batman, and the best opening of Matt Damon's career, period. You know the story from school. Odysseus, king of Ithaca, spent 10 years fighting at Troy, came up with the Trojan horse, and then spent another 10 years trying to get home to his wife Penelope and his son Telemachus. Cyclopes, sirens, the most basic hero's journey in the textbook. But Nolan wouldn't be Nolan if he shot it straight. Fact number 1. This is the first film in history shot entirely on IMAX film cameras. Nolan has been shooting on IMAX film since The Dark Knight, but until now, only select scenes. A classic IMAX film camera is a massive machine that roars like a tractor. Recording dialogue with it is nearly impossible. So IMAX developed a new generation of cameras specifically for Nolan, lighter and roughly 30% quieter. And for the underwater scenes, engineers built special waterproof housings, the first time in narrative film history that 70mm IMAX cameras properly shot underwater. The result? 164 shooting days across Morocco, Greece, Italy, Iceland, and beyond. Real full-size ships instead of green screens, zero generative AI, and more than 610 kilometers of exposed film. That's roughly the distance from New York to Pittsburgh. Fact number 2. Tom Holland and the mysterious cut. An IMAX film magazine holds only about 3 minutes of footage. Holland, used to digital cameras, admitted in an interview that he panicked during his first days on set. Nolan kept yelling cut in the middle of takes, and the actor became convinced his performance was awful. Then he found out the director was simply stopping to reload the film. Self-esteem saved. Fact number 3. Nolan was supposed to direct Troy 20 years ago. This is my favorite detail. In the early 2000s, Nolan was in talks to direct Troy, based on the Iliad, the poem whose events lead directly into the Odyssey. The project went to Wolfgang Petersen instead, and as a consolation prize, the studio offered Nolan Batman Begins, the very film that launched his entire empire. And 20 years later, he finally got his Greeks, a beautiful arc. Fact number 4. The Dreamcast, and one clever dual role. Odysseus is Matt Damon, and critics are already calling it the best performance of his career. Penelope is Anne Hathaway. Telemachus is Tom Holland. The arrogant suitor Antinous is Robert Pattinson, who steals every scene he's in. Zendaya plays the goddess Athena, and her character hides the film's biggest twist. We'll get there. Charlize Theron is the nymph Calypso, and Circe is played by Samantha Morton. Meanwhile, Lupita Nyong'o plays 2 roles at once, Helen of Troy and Clytemnestra. In Nolan's version, they're twin sisters. Remember this detail. It's going to pay off. By the way, the internet had buried this film long before release, mocking the casting choices, and Agamemnon's supposedly inaccurate armor, which people compared to a Batman suit. Nolan calmly fired back with archaeology. Mycenaean daggers of blackened bronze have genuinely been found in excavations. The hate crashed against record-breaking box office numbers. Quick warning, from this point on, there are moderate spoilers. The full ending spoilers come later. I'll warn you again. Let's talk about the details you might have missed. First, the structure. The timeline is, of course, non-linear. We see most of the journey as memories, with Odysseus recounting his ordeal to Calypso on her island. But for the first time in ages, Nolan's complexity isn't there for puzzle box thrills. It exists to show how the war keeps hunting the hero years later. This is a film about post-traumatic stress, wrapped in an ancient epic. And it's far easier to follow than Tenet. You can exhale. Second, Nolan's first horror scene. The Cyclops sequence with Polyphemus was described by a Hollywood Reporter journalist as the first full-blown horror scene of Nolan's career. A claustrophobic nightmare inside the giant's cave. Odysseus's men blind Polyphemus Artemis and escape, only to learn that he's the son of Poseidon. That's the moment their curse begins. They become literally lost at sea. Third, what Nolan cut from Homer. The Phaeacians and Princess Nausicaa are gone entirely, even though in Homer, they're the ones who deliver Odysseus back to Ithaca. There's no Aeolus with his bag of winds either. What remains? The Laestrygonians, man-eating giants who destroy nearly the entire fleet. The Sirens, whose song Odysseus survives by having himself tied to the mast. And Scylla, attacking the ship in a narrow strait. As for the lotus flowers of oblivion, here it's Calypso herself who feeds them to Odysseus. The film's central temptation isn't immortality, it's the chance to simply forget everything you've done. And fourth, Helen's scars. In the film, half of Helen's face is disfigured. The movie implies it's payback for the crime of her twin sister Clytemnestra, who murdered her husband Agamemnon. And there's a cruel joke in the dialogue. The face that once launched 1,000 ships could now launch maybe 500. The beauty that started the war, destroyed by the war itself. The entire film, compressed into a single detail. And now, full ending spoilers. If you haven't seen the film, this is your last chance to pause. The return. Odysseus finally reaches Ithaca, but he doesn't enter as a king. He disguises himself as a beggar. From his beaten friend, the swineherd Eumaeus, he learns that Antinous' men are planning an ambush on Telemachus at a temple in Pylos. Odysseus gets there in time. He sets the temple on fire and pulls his son out in the chaos. The palace. Under the sacred law of hospitality, the law of Zeus, a wandering beggar must be given shelter. And so Odysseus ends up inside his own palace, among his wife's suitors, enduring Antinous' humiliations. Only one soul recognizes the master, his old dog, Argos. If your eyes stayed dry during that scene, you're stronger than I am. The bow. Penelope speaks with the mysterious beggar, and judging by her reaction, she realizes exactly who's standing in front of her. But she doesn't expose him. Instead, she announces a contest. She will marry whoever can string Odysseus' bow and shoot an arrow through a row of axes. It's a genius move, a secret identity test. She knows perfectly well that only one man alive can bend that bow with his particular technique. The weapons are locked away, the exits are boarded shut. The suitors fail, one by one. Then the beggar takes the bow, draws it effortlessly, and Ithaca recognizes its king. The slaughter. What follows is a long, brutal massacre. Odysseus and Telemachus wipe out the invaders, and Antinous dies by the king's hand. And here's the first unexpected move. Victory brings no relief. Formally, Odysseus is in the right. The suitors trampled the law of hospitality and plotted to murder his heir, but he has just turned his own home into a killing floor. The cycle of violence that began at Troy has closed its loop inside his own palace. The Athena twist. Throughout the film, Athena accompanies the hero in the form of a young woman, offering guidance at crucial moments. In the finale, we learn whose face she's wearing. It's the face of a girl that Odysseus' soldiers killed inside Athena's own temple during the sack of Troy, the same temple where they beheaded the goddess's statue and committed sacrilege. All these years, his divine helper has been appearing to him with the face of his victim, help and punishment in a single form, or perhaps guilt itself, made flesh, refusing to let him go. The Sea Peoples. Running through the entire film is a prophecy. One day, invaders will come from the sea and bring destruction to every land. And this is where Nolan fuses myth with real history. The Sea Peoples are not fiction. They're mentioned in ancient Egyptian texts as raiders, and according to the classical theory, their invasions were one of the causes of the late Bronze Age collapse, a real catastrophe of the 12th century BC, when Egypt, the Hittite Empire, Babylon, and Mycenaean Greece, Odysseus' own civilization, fell or crumbled within a shockingly short span. And here's the kicker. According to more modern theories, the Sea Peoples the Egyptians described may have been the Greeks themselves, with their raids. In the finale, Odysseus arrives at the same conclusion historians reached 3,000 years later. The prophecy is about him. The Sea Peoples are him and his surviving men. By destroying Troy, they didn't end a war. They triggered a chain reaction that will burn the entire known world. Hence his final speech. By setting fire to the walls of Troy, he set fire to the walls of the world. The exile. And this is why the ending breaks radically from Homer. In the poem, Odysseus reclaims his throne. A happy ending. Nolan chooses differently. His hero voluntarily goes into exile, renounces power, and sails out to sea once more. As long as a man with that name, the destroyer of Troy, the reason his crew is dead, the author of a palace massacre, sits on the throne, Ithaca will never be free of his legacy. Leaving is his way to stop the chaos he unleashed, and to clear the path for his son. Telemachus becomes king, and the story transforms into a parable. The generation trapped in endless wars must step aside for the young, who deserve the chance to try things their own way. The final shot, the Trojan horse. The hero's greatest trick, and at the same time, a monument to the catastrophe he engineered. Genius and guilt in a single silhouette. So what does it all mean? Critics have already called the Odyssey a spiritual sequel to Oppenheimer, and it's not a stretch. Both films are about great men who realized the cost of their decisions too late. One unleashed the bomb on the world, the other built a wooden horse and set the collapse of an entire age in motion. Entertainment Weekly went as far as calling it the most Nolan film Nolan has ever made. The spectacle of Inception fused with the intellect of Oppenheimer. But this ending is brighter. Civilization, Odysseus says, will one day rebuild itself. Darkness will give way to a new dawn. Sailing beyond the horizon, he finally takes full responsibility. Whether that's redemption, punishment, or the beginning of a new journey, Nolan, as always, leaves for you to decide. The top is still spinning. The bottom line is simple. The Odyssey is that rare case where the most expensive blockbuster of the summer turns out to be a genuine auteur statement, a technical feat, a box office phenomenon, and a dark, grown-up film about the price of victory. One that argues with a 3,000-year-old text and wins the argument. Watch it on the biggest screen you can physically reach. At home, this film loses half of itself. Now, a question for you. Nolan's ending, a brilliant reinvention, or should he have kept Homer's finale, where the king reclaims his throne? Drop your take in the comments. Let's hold our own contest of the suitors. And a like and subscribe would be like a fair wind from Aeolus, the god Nolan cut from the film, by the way. See you in the next one.